Imagine, in a crowded city market, a sharp slap silenced everything. People froze. A barefoot boy stood still, an orange rolling away at his feet. He didn't cry. He didn't speak. Why? Because sometimes the loudest stories come from the quietest pain. What happened next shocked the entire market and changed one man forever. It was a normal morning in the heart of the city market. Street vendors shouted over each other, calling out their best deals. Honking rickshaws weaved through narrow lanes. The smell of spices, fried snacks, and fresh produce floated in the air. The place was alive, buzzing, loud. But then, a sharp slap echoed through the noise, louder than anything else. Everything stopped. His face was red with anger. "You little thief," he shouted, his voice shaking with fury. "Do you think being hungry gives you the right to steal from my shop?" The boy didn't speak. His lips trembled slightly, but no words came out. His eyes welled up with tears, but he didn't let a single one fall. He just stared down at the orange, as if the fruit was the only thing in the world that understood his pain. People began to gather. Men stopped loading crates. Women paused mid-shopping. Children peeked from behind their mothers' legs. Whispers filled the air. Did he really steal? Poor child, look at him. He must be starving. Some shook their heads, others crossed their arms. But not one person stepped forward to help him. Not one spoke out. In that moment, no one knew who the boy was. No one knew where he came from. They didn't know his name, his story, or the hunger that led to that orange in his hand. But they all witnessed the pain behind his silence. His name was Eli. He was just 12 years old, but life had already aged him far beyond his years. His clothes were torn and faded, his face pale and thin, and his messy brown hair clung to his forehead from the heat. His skin had been darkened by the sun, not from play, but from survival. Eli hadn't always lived like this. 2 years ago, he had a home. He had a bed, a school bag, and a mother who kissed his forehead every morning. But everything changed the day a fire tore through his family's small house. It took everything, his parents, his security, and any hope of a normal childhood. With no relatives willing to take him in, Eli ended up on the streets. From that point on, every day was a battle to find food, to avoid danger, and to simply survive another night. That morning was worse than usual. He hadn't eaten anything since the day before, a piece of leftover bread someone had thrown near a tea stall. His stomach growled painfully as he walked through the market. His eyes scanned the food stalls, watching people enjoy their breakfasts, warm sandwiches, spicy fritters, fresh juices. The smells surrounded him, teasing him. But no one offered him anything. Most people didn't even see him. Then he saw Richard's fruit corner. It was one of the biggest stalls in the market, overflowing with shiny red apples, juicy mangoes, ripe bananas, and plump grapes. The fruits were stacked in perfect pyramids, glowing under the morning sun. Eli paused and stared. His mouth watered. His legs trembled, not from fear, but from hunger. He didn't want to steal. He knew it was wrong. But his hunger screamed louder than his conscience. At that moment, he didn't care about right or wrong. He just wanted to stop the pain in his belly. So he slowly reached out, grabbed a small orange, and turned to walk away, quietly, carefully. But luck wasn't on his side. Mr. Richards saw him. Without asking a single question, without considering the boy's state, Richards stepped out from behind the counter and slapped him hard across the face. Eli flinched. The sound of the slap echoed through the market, louder than the honking of the rickshaws. And once again, Eli said nothing. He simply stood there, his hunger momentarily forgotten, replaced by shock and humiliation. A small crowd had begun to gather, drawn by the echo of the slap and the sight of the boy standing motionless. Eli, still holding the orange in one hand, stood frozen, his body stiff, his eyes cast downward, and his face flushed with a mix of embarrassment, fear, and shame. His heart pounded. He wanted to disappear, to vanish into the ground, but all he could do was stand there. People were whispering around him, staring at him like he was something less than human. Then, slowly, an elderly woman stepped forward. Her silver hair was tied back, and her wrinkled hands trembled slightly as she placed one gently on Eli's shoulder.
"Son,"
she asked softly, her voice kind, "why would you steal?" Eli looked up at her with watery eyes, lips trembling. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. He tried to speak, to explain, but nothing would escape his throat. He looked down again, shoulders sagging under the weight of shame. Just behind the stall, another vendor, Mr. Harris, who sold vegetables a few shops away, leaned toward Richard and said in a low voice, "He's just a child, Richard. Probably starving. Was the slap really necessary?" But Richard, still fuming, crossed his arms and barked, "If we start forgiving thieves, the whole market will be robbed tomorrow. I don't care if he's hungry. Theft is theft." Some in the crowd murmured in disagreement, but no one openly challenged Richard until a small voice cut through the tension. A young girl, Sophie, barely 10 years old, stepped forward from the side of the crowd. She was holding her mother's hand, but gently let go and walked toward Eli. She pulled out half a sandwich from her lunchbox and a small water bottle, then reached out and gave them to him. Eli looked up at her, confused and surprised. No one had ever done that for him. Sophie's mother stood quietly behind, watching, but she didn't stop her. Richard scoffed loudly. "What are you doing? You're spoiling him. He'll steal again." But Sophie turned, looked Richard directly in the eye, and calmly said, "Have you ever been so hungry you had to steal to survive?" The entire street went silent. Even Richard had no answer. The silence that followed Sophie's words lingered in the air like morning mist, and slowly, one by one, kindness began to ripple through the crowd. The first to act was Tom, the kind-hearted tea-stall owner who had been watching from across the street. He wiped his hands on a cloth, walked over to Eli, and gently placed his hand on the boy's back. "Come, son," he said warmly. "Sit here. You look like you haven't had anything in days." Tom brought out a cup of hot tea and 2 slices of buttered toast. Simple food, but in that moment, to Eli, it felt like a feast. As Eli sat on the wooden bench beside Tom's stall, tears welled up in his eyes, not from pain this time, but from the sudden flood of compassion. Not far behind, a group of women, who had been watching everything unfold, began to collect a few bills from their handbags. One of them, a mother of 3, said, "He's a child. Hungry children don't need punishment. They need protection." They handed the money to Tom to keep safely for Eli, to help him buy clean clothes, food, or anything else he might need in the coming days. Then, an older woman named Mrs. Langley, wearing a wide hat and carrying a basket of groceries, came forward. She knelt beside Eli and asked softly, "Do you have anywhere to sleep, sweetheart?" Eli looked down and shook his head gently. Mrs. Langley didn't waste a second. She pulled out her phone and called a local children's shelter, explaining what had happened. The shelter staff promised to send someone immediately to help the boy and make sure he'd be safe that night and many nights after. While all of this was happening, Richard stood at his fruit stall, silent and still. His arms had dropped to his sides. His usual pride was nowhere to be seen. He began to notice something unsettling. People were now walking past his stall without stopping. Familiar customers didn't smile or wave. Some gave him disapproving looks. One young boy passing with his father pointed and whispered, "That's the mean man who slapped the hungry kid." Those words echoed in Richard's mind all evening. That day he closed his stall early. For the first time, he didn't feel proud. The next morning, the market buzzed with its usual energy. Vendors shouted prices, customers haggled for better deals, and the scent of fresh fruits and spices floated in the warm air. But amidst the routine, something unusual caught everyone's attention. Mr. Richard returned, not to open his fruit stall, but to do something he had never done before. He wasn't carrying crates or arranging apples like he usually did. Instead, he walked slowly through the market, his shoulders slightly hunched, his face serious. In his hands was a small brown paper bag, carefully folded at the top. There was no anger in his eyes today, no pride, only something that looked like humility. Richard walked over to a nearby bench where Eli was sitting. He looked cleaner today. He had bathed, changed into fresh clothes, and was speaking with a woman in a blue scarf. Her name was Miss Grace, a volunteer from the shelter that had taken him in the night before. As Richard approached, Eli looked up. Their eyes met. There was a long pause. Then, with a soft, almost trembling voice, Richard spoke.
"Eli, I'm sorry." Everyone around turned to listen. "I was wrong," he continued. "I let my pride control me. I didn't stop to think about your pain or your hunger."
I saw you as a thief, not as a boy who just needed help. He then gently handed the paper bag to Eli. The boy slowly opened it. Inside were fresh apples, bananas, and oranges, the same fruits that once felt impossible to reach. "These aren't stolen," Richard said, lowering his gaze. "They're a gift," with respect. Miss Grace smiled kindly and looked at Richard. "Mr. Richard, perhaps you'd like to do more for Eli. Would you consider sponsoring his meals for a month, or helping other children like him?" Richard nodded. "Yes, I'd like that very much." From that moment, the market saw a new version of the once arrogant shopkeeper. Outside Richard's fruit corner, a small wooden sign was placed near the stall. "For anyone hungry, take one fruit, no questions asked." Next to the basket of free fruits, a small photo frame appeared, Eli, smiling, holding a full plate of food. That smile became a symbol, not just of survival, but of forgiveness, growth, and the power of a second chance. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment below. Your words matter, just like Eli's story. And if you want more powerful, emotional stories that inspire change and hope, hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon so you never miss a moment that matters. Thank you for watching.